Thank you very much.
Now, I believe it's time to take our first trip of the day over to the green screen, where Ben Thomas will be talking to Mark Coxon about all things AI. Let's have a look.
Let's do it.
Well, thanks for sending it over here, Ben. This is our first segment of the day over here at the virtual set. You're right, we are talking about AI, but not probably in the way that you're thinking we might talk about AI. Look, if you're on the show floor, you're hearing AI in technology and things like facial tracking, all sorts of different places, but we're talking about the business use case for AI in our business. Joined today by none other than my friend Mark Coxon. Mark, great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Mark, I know you had a chance to kind of give a presentation yesterday about some of these business use cases of AI. What are some of the key conversation points that you were talking about yesterday, and what are some of the things that you've seen already from the show?
You know, I think when we think about AI, the first thing we think about is generative, but AI has so many more aspects to it. And when we're thinking about our businesses and what we're doing, you know, some of the things that we're doing is we're leveraging AI to actually improve the way that we do meetings internally. We happen to be an early adopter of Copilot, because of our Microsoft relationship. And so we can do things like make sure that we're getting great meeting synopsises, we can get action items, we can see points of disagreement in a meeting, and then you can take those notes and say, hey, based on this, what should the agenda for my next meeting be? So we're actually moving this ball forward, and we're not re-summarizing. I mean, I think one of the most frustrating things in meetings is we talk about the things that we talked about last time, but we actually haven't moved the ball forward in any way. In AI, we're using that in a way that actually allows us to start to move things forward and make our workflows much, much better.
Well, Mark, you know what's been interesting is a lot of manufacturers are having conversations about AI, but I'd love to hear how some of the non-manufacturing community, whether it's the service providers or the installers, integrators, dealers, distributor partners, are having conversations about AI. How are you guys leveraging a lot of the technologies over at AVI-SPL?
You know, you hear about the generative aspects like we talked about earlier, and I think we're going to talk about that in a minute, but the generative aspects are interesting for things like chat, et cetera. However, they're also great for synthesizing data. So, you know, maybe we have a process that we want to change. So we interview all our departments, we did this ourselves, we interviewed all our departments, then we take these 40 surveys we get back on where people have points of frustration, we run those through chat with a prompt, and then we actually end up with, you know, maybe 8 categories of things that we could change as a business in order to now communicate better, to have better handoffs, to create better outcomes with our customers, to get people more involved in the knowledge share and the transfer of these complex projects that we're working on. And so being able to use it to synthesize data is a real superpower, and it's something everybody has access to right now that they could start to do in order to leverage AI in their business in a little different way.
Well, look, you talk about that great data. It also allows you to be a little bit more predictive and prescriptive. One of the ways that you mentioned yesterday in your presentation was rebuilding the Death Star. How does stuff like that, you know, I mean, obviously that's a bit of a kind of a joke thing that you did, but how can we also take some of that data to be prescriptive and proactive to learn from our mistakes, like maybe having a tube that shouldn't go down to the core of an entire Death Star?
Yeah, I think that's really important, right? And I think sometimes when we're going through a meeting, we have these tangents that pop up, and there are things that are really important that happen in the meeting that maybe because we're focused on the outcome that we set the meeting for, that we miss the nuance of what was actually said. And so having AI actually be listening and looking at those things, and at the end summarizing those points, you get these points of agreement and disagreement at the end, and you say, oh wait, this was a really important part of the meeting that kind of passed me by. And it helps people catch up if they can't attend meetings, et cetera, right? So being able to go back and actually see that dashboard and say, hey, this is the clip, this is the summary of what happened, and then they actually tag those. So if you want to see the nuanced conversation, you can click a number and it'll take you to that part of the conversation to help you get in the know on what happened. So.
Well, look, you talk about some of that nuance and maybe some of the best practices and ideas. You know, a lot of people, even a lot of folks here, have a lot of questions about, okay, where do I start? How do I try and roll things out, like leveraging large language models or things like Copilot? What are some of those best practices that you recommend for folks?
You know, I just say be curious. You know, our team, our directive was to be curious. Use the tools that are available to us. You know, chat's a free tool. You can sign up for your own version of chat if you want and pay, and have your attendant actually learn who you are, which is even more valuable. Being curious with our partners, you know, Zoom and Microsoft and these partners are starting to add AI tools in for meeting analysis and all of those things. And then being a pioneer of new products like Places and Spaces and all of those pieces as well. So I think the best practice is really just get your hands dirty. Right now, nobody's got it all figured out. And so really figuring out what the tools do and how they work for you, I think is the best practice, and you can only do that by getting elbow deep in the things that are available to us.
Well, Mark, one of the ways that I know that you guys leverage it is kind of the generative side of things, not only from a predictive and proactive text standpoint, but things like images. How are you leveraging some of those extra creative elements inside the AI tools?
Yeah, I think we hear a lot about generative AI with things like Rafik Anadol and these beautiful installations for content, et cetera, and I think that's a great way to do it. However, like in our business, what we're doing is a lot of times we're designing spaces that are supposed to create a visceral impact on people. And sometimes we're designing things that have never been designed before. And so trying then to articulate what technology is going to do in a space to a customer, or to let our customer be able to then go sell that to their stakeholders, what we're able to do is we're able to do some real creative script writing, prompt writing, in order to create this imagery to really give people an idea of what we're trying to build and execute on, in order for them to be able to create this really emotional connection with their customers through their space and technology. And so it's been an invaluable tool in trying to get, parts and pieces and spec sheets go so far, but to actually be able to create something quickly without having to spend weeks rendering something out with a CAD team, to be able to create something quickly that bridges the gap between words on paper and a picture in somebody's head has been really, really valuable.
Mark, what's interesting, and I loved even some of the points you made yesterday in your conversation. We talked a little bit, even off camera today, about how AI is making it easier for folks to kind of have conversations in the industry across vertical, even making it easier for folks like first-timers in the industry to learn just a little bit more about some of the standards and best practices. What are some of the ways that folks who may be newer to the world of AV can leverage some of these tools to just learn a little bit more about some of our verticals in our industry specifically?
I think the power of it is it synthesizes a lot of data, right? So like if you go and do a Google search, you're going to get a lot of sponsored links, you're going to do a lot of different things. But if you can come up with a very specific question, hey, ChatGPT, what is the difference between 12G SDI and HDMI 2.0? Like, it'll answer that question for you, and it'll query a lot of those sources and give you those things. And then if you find points that you really want to dig in and be a student on, then you can go back and you can then leverage those insights that you get out of that tool to go in and be a bigger student. We've even used it to analyze, is this market worth exploring, right? Like, what are the main things that decision makers in this market are Googling or looking for out in the space? And if that data exists in the language model, you'll find that. So I think you can use it in a lot of ways as a learning tool. When I first started in AV, there wasn't even Google, right? It was 2002. Google wasn't a thing. I had to go to this website called whatis.com and to figure out what these things were. And we have such powerful tools now to do that. When you combine those with education like Avixa has, et cetera, there's a great ramp for new people in AV to get up to speed really quickly.
Well, Mark, we appreciate you coming on. I know we've probably got some folks watching right now who have some questions. How can people find you and get in touch with you?
I am at AVI-SPL, so you can always find me, Mark Coxon, mark.coxon at AVI-SPL.com. That's an email. You can have it. That's fine. It's easy to figure out. I'm on Twitter as AV Phenom, or X, I guess it is now. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting little videos on LinkedIn about AV as food or some kind of stuff at any given point.
Or fried chicken.
Or fried chicken. There might be a bespoke hush hush fried chicken crawl later tonight. I don't know. Somebody might have got an invite. We'll see.
Well, I don't know, Mark. that might be the tease of the century right there. But I'll tell you what, we appreciate you coming on and being willing to have conversations about the world of AI. There's just a lot of I don't know that unknown's the right answer, but just a lot of ambiguity, I think, in the world of AI. And I appreciate you leading the conversation on how businesses can leverage a lot of the technology. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Ben.
Well, awesome. It was great to have Mark on. We also have our friends on from Black Box next. Check it out.